Nestled between the redwoods of Northern California and the ocean sits the rural college town of Arcata.
I love that everybody's friendly and that I get to have really good, healthy food.
What I like actually is generally the sense of community.
I love the community is a caring community.
Arcata shares a peculiar connection to its surroundings. Remnants of times past are often found. Hippies, seemingly taken out of the 1960s, walk, dance, and hula hoop through nature's vast expanse. But deeper problems simmer under the tranquil surroundings.
You know, I grew up in Arcata, in a way. You know, from when I was a teenager till now, I became a man here, I guess you'd say. And it, in a way, it was hard that because we're a community that doesn't have a lot of color. It's, you know, that's just a fact.
On one hand, Humboldt County, or Arcata even more so, is conceived or perceived of a very liberal community. In a lot of ways it is. So it's a kind of a liberal white community in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of very conservative values here also.
Recently, the beautiful, charming community of Arcata was rocked by the murder of a young, innocent college student. In April 2017, students were spending a spring evening having a party, a typical occurrence until two students were stabbed, one fatally. David Josiah Lawson was stabbed to death on Saturday, April 15, 2017. He was 19 years old. A criminology major at Humboldt State University, Josiah was respected as a leader and friend to many. His killer remains free.
Man, he was the life of the party. He was just so energetic. He definitely understood. He was a family person. You know, his mom always spoke kindly of her. His family. He always knew that family was first.
Josiah was a sweetheart. He was the first student that I met. He was working at TJ Maxx over in the mall. He had the biggest smile and the biggest heart. And I think for me, that's why it hurt. I mean, it would hurt regardless, but it really hurt.
The saddest thing, he was a great individual, you know, and we lost a life. We lost a life no matter what. That's always really sad. And this would sound like a great, real leader in the community, you know, and particularly in the black community.
I woke up 3 a.m., 5 a.m., around 4-ish, to a phone call from my brother Tim saying, bro, Josiah's been stabbed.
Justice for Josiah!
An HSU alumnus and journalist has followed the event since the murder, attending press conferences and speaking to students to find out what really happened that night.
Josiah and his friends were approached over a missing cell phone, and that the girlfriend of the suspect who was released from jail kind of like initiated the conflict or the confrontation turning to conflict by, you know, asking or demanding that they flip out their pockets or something.
Nobody deserved to lose their life that night. Nobody deserved to especially so brutally.
I definitely think that race, you know, played a role in it because of maybe the stereotypes, you know, of this girl, like at this party. You know, she lost her phone and she just for sure knew like one of these black people had it, I guess, you know, so.
You know, a thing called unconscious bias. We behave in ways that we don't realize can be deemed as racist or biased because we don't see it that way. You know, sometimes we don't see ourselves as racist, and, you know, our behaviors and activities, because it's not being directed towards us because we're directing it to someone else, we don't see it as painful. Once you're on the other side and, if someone walks up to me and says, empty your pockets, why are you asking me that? The first thing I will think, it's because I'm black. That's unfortunate.
And then there's the reports of her standing near Josiah after he was stabbed saying I hope that nigger dies, excuse my language, but
The matureness and the understanding that he had for people without. And I definitely appreciated that about him. That, that it's something, that quality, the generosity of him, it'll always be missed. It'll always be missed.
Radio scanner traffic logs preserved online by a local newspaper detailed the timeline of emergency response. Between 3 and 3:05 a.m., police radioed that a woman had been stabbed and that multiple units were responding, also noting that Arcata Medical had been alerted. Shortly after, the CHP confirmed that a man was down. By 3:10 a.m., Arcata police confirmed that the scene was secure, that a man is down, a possible stabbing, and CPR is in progress. Between 3:14 and 3:15 a.m., Arcata police reported a very aggressive crowd, sending more officers en route by 3:21 a.m.
What took so long for him to get in the ambulance into the hospital, which was right down the street? You didn't have to make no left turn, no right turn. The hospital was literally right down the street. And we still don't know, why was there a delay? Why was the police more focused on riot control and stuff like that? And campus police showed up that night. They showed up that night. What in your training as university police helped to diffuse the situation or helped to get this kid to the hospital quicker? And the university police is oh, we were focused on saving his life. Well, he died, and he didn't get to the hospital in a timely manner.
Human beings are not disposable. The death of 19-year-old Josiah has elicited a great divide.
Recently, the MCC has been vandalized. People are tearing down our Josiah posters because they do not support it, I guess.
In regards to the posters being torn down, I'm one of the crew that was putting them up. It takes time, it takes energy, putting out pamphlets for people to actually get exposed to some of this information that's out there, some of this open information, that some facts that have gone wrong. Structurally within this case, and presenting facts to a situation can sometimes bridge the gap of ignorance. Some people are woefully ignorant and don't want to learn or don't want to change their perspective. They approach it from a privileged perspective. That's often the relationship, the dialogue that we got when we were handing out these flyers, that certain people wanted to distance themselves because it's too political. It's too heavy. Not everybody's gonna agree. Hearing that is very daunting. You have to find a ways around it to maneuver the conversation where it's not political, and you actually make it seem from a personal perspective, an empathetic perspective, that hey, this could have been anybody. This could have been your son. Do you have children? Do you wish the best for them? Do you plan for them to go to college? These are questions that I'd often have to ask to break that barrier of them pushing it away, them distancing themselves, or generalizing, actually overgeneralizing it, oh, there's violence everywhere. People get killed all the time. Are you okay with that?
This town was traumatized by David Josiah Lawson, and I believe it was traumatized by other incidents prior to him. He was the tipping point.
There are many instances of racism that have existed in this community that has gone without being addressed.
In 1860, colonizers laid in wait until the able-bodied indigenous men of a tribe had left their homes to gather supplies. Once they left, the colonizing forces seized their chance and butchered at least 150 women and children with axes, guns, and knives. It was a coordinated attack against women and children to rid Humboldt of what the white community referred to as its Indian problem. The only writer to speak out against the massacre was driven into exile.
The only statue that Arcata has is one of imperialism, is a symbolic form of oppressing other people and creating colonies throughout the world.
Standing over 8 feet tall in the heart of Arcata is a statue of former President William McKinley. It was given as a gift in 1906 after an earthquake toppled it in its original home. President McKinley was notorious for declaring indigenous people as unfit for self-government and believing America's role was to civilize and Christianize them via military force. The statue casts an uncomfortable shadow on native land less than 10 miles from the site of the Indian Island massacre.
Here we are, 16 years later, not even knowing that a student was murdered in the community before, and the police never solved the murder, you know?
In October 2001, Corey Clark, a Humboldt State student, went out to a club and never came home. He was found in a Eureka apartment shot point blank. The case remains cold with no defendant ever named or charged, but locals casually say that Corey may have deserved his fate for allegedly being involved in someone else's romantic affairs. Students at Humboldt State are having to deal with the consequences of living with those open, unhealed wounds of historical racism.
I've definitely heard my share of stories of what happens to people of color after dark, after 2 a.m., being in the plaza.
Minding her own business, walking down the street, coming one way, elderly white woman walks the other way and says to her, "Hey, free slave."
And it wasn't until things started progressing with the Trump inauguration and his political campaign that I started to feel really unsafe, because different people who supported him were coming by and telling people who were of my color to go back to where we're from and that America was better without us.
There was times where we didn't leave campus for 2 weeks, maybe more. I'm not saying that we just stayed here because we wanted to all the time. I don't know, and we didn't always feel super comfortable off campus.
My time here in Arcata, definitely culture shock. And it's had its highs and its very low lows. Especially last semester was pretty hard, but mostly due to Josiah's death. He was a really awesome person, and that didn't need to happen, but it did. And all the people that really love him are organizing to get justice for him. So that type of community really keeps me here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
When it comes to the students going to the president and telling her what's happening on campus, being followed home by different people, seeing Confederate flags going around the campus, she didn't care. No one is there they listen to your stories, but then nothing happens. No action is taken.
There are times when I feel like it's home. There are other times I feel like I'm a stranger here. I'd like to have more of the times where I feel like it's home.
Students are wondering, when will change happen?
The Dean of Students, okay? She wrote her master thesis in 1996, okay, about why students of color don't feel safe on Humboldt's campus. I was 4 years old, okay? 4 years old. Then I come to this school when I am 17 and y'all having the same problems. I graduate, y'all having the same problems. A student's murdered, y'all having the same conversations about what to do. It seems like this is just what Humboldt is.
For the school to make us feel safe again, show us. Show us by doing something. Don't just listen. Give us some type of action. Having these community dialogue on race, different social justice events, they're all put on by the students. And the school, we have to beg them so much to just come to the event, listen to the stories. There should be trainings for teachers on how to not project microaggressions in your classroom. There's other people who have put in things in their syllabi where you have to be the colonizer, colonize a country and create its economy. And that's what your fucking senior project would be, And that's not okay. For someone who that's part of their history, you shouldn't have to do that. Someone should be checking professors, checking the community. Have the city hall do different trainings for their police officers, for the community. There's so much that could be done, but everyone says there's no money to do it, but there's money somewhere, and they need to allocate it to things that matter.
While students want answers, they're left frustrated, feeling unheard.
And I'm trying to be calm, but I could have been on a newspaper just like my best friend Josiah. And that's all God.
Where did you get stabbed? What county? I mean, not county, but what city was it?
This was in Arcata. Like on Samoa. All because the guy was blocking
on that dark road. And it started over a beat of a horn.
Yep, one beat.
One beat.
One beat.
We beat the horn one time. We beat the horn one time. So it explains our anger. Period. Like y'all should have cameras, y'all should have lights. Maybe y'all be able to find the people that's doing this stuff, you feel me? Right. Y'all have no lights, no cameras on these dark roads, you feel me? And that's exactly why this stuff happens. Put cameras and lights on the street. Maybe you'll find out who's doing this stuff.
Lighting people on fire.
Exactly, at a church.
Okay, you guys, so in order for them to hear you respond to your questions, let's just do one question at a time, okay?
I missed the beginning of the meeting. I came in the middle, but immediately I thought, okay, here's the mayor's there, the police chief, the president of the university. They're all there to talk about this issue, and they're all people that most of them I know, and they're being, when I walked in the door, it was sort of already at a confrontation level, and they were answering to the young black students of the college who felt like they weren't getting their fair shake.
No, it's about safety for students. But I think one of the most important things that we can do to honor Josiah is to make progress in creating a safe and supportive.
So what are y'all doing for the students? What are y'all doing to make sure another student don't die?
Yeah, because this is a meeting on student safety, so we're trying to figure out what's the steps that we're supposed to take as students, because I'm a student as well, and I don't really feel safe on campus, off campus, you feel me, knowing that if I call the police and one of my friends was just murdered and nothing happened, and 6 months later everything's still pending. Another one of my friends, peers that I know, student that I know, was just stabbed a few days ago, and calling the police, don't nothing happen, it's still waiting for a report to happen. So what do y'all suggest that we do as students to make steps towards improving student safety?
It's a lot of the same. They're hearing the same thing that they heard last week and last month and the month before that, and so on and so forth, and it's not going anywhere.
Of course. Absolutely productive. It may not feel like it in the moment, because it gets intense and it's uncomfortable and it's awkward. But I think that they're hearing what is being said.
City and school officials are grappling with how to bring together Arcata and the college.
There's definitely a split between what's called town and gown, where the town is one world and the college is another world. That's sort of always been that way.
Students are bringing community members and families to the campus for breakfast and books. Students desperately want to see healing and better understanding, and they're giving away free books to children in an attempt to educate the kids about diversity.
The goal of this is to bridge the institution or the resource gap between the institution and the community. So I've invited a lot of community family members who have young children, as well as students, to come and get free breakfast and one free book as while supplies last. And what inspired Books and Breakfast was Hands Up United, which is a book club in Missouri that arose after Trayvon Martin's death in 2014, I believe, and as well as the all-day breakfast program by the Black Panthers. I feel like as a kid, I would have loved to have access to these kind of books that deconstructed dominant narratives and talked about things other than having straight hair or maybe playing only with girl toys, being a girl. Just deconstructing social norms at a young age, I think, is a really powerful thing.
Dialogue. dialogue is important. Dialogue is important to understand differences, similarities, to gain understanding, and to learn, not only for yourself, but learn of each other. And we can only live with each other if we have dialogue with each other and learn. Not only dialogue, but listen, and listen with a kind heart. Remove the preconceived notions and just listen with your heart.
Awareness is the first step to change. Dr. Johnson maintains that communities can heal from trauma.
You have to acknowledge. You have to acknowledge something before you can move through healing. You're going to have to acknowledge, you're going to have to validate that there's racism here. And we have to deal with it.
Educate yourself about something different than you're used to. Take you and your family out of that norm and go to a different cultural scenario here, so that maybe in a situation that you've always been in the majority, you might find yourself in a minority, and seeing how that situation feels.
I'd love to see this place where there's cultural understanding and respect. And from there we can move to that place of living harmoniously with one another. But we can't get there without understanding each other, our similarities and our differences, and respecting those differences for its unique value, rather than separating us and dividing us as a result.
I think the legacy to create for David Josiah Lawson is, the conviction is one thing, finding who did it and them being convicted, but changing it up here, changing the town, changing the various systems here, business community, the city, the university, changing those things so students of color feel welcomed in the classroom, as well as they feel welcome when they go out into town like any other kid.
Everything we do now, we know we're not going to reap any benefits from it. We're doing it for everyone that comes after us.
These are Josiah's very own words, played before the Arcata City Council. Recorded before he attended Humboldt State, Josiah displayed a wisdom beyond his years.
My name is Charmaine Lawson. I am Josiah Lawson's mom. We are here in silence today to honor my son. So each time I come to the city council meeting, I speak, the students speak, but my son DJ have not spoken. So I want to hear his voice.
So, good evening. My name is David Lawson, and I will be attending Humboldt State University in the fall. I got a degree in medical school, and I'll be majoring in criminal justice to become a lawyer and probably enter politics. The word man has been thrown around quite often in today's society. People commonly use the word to show age, strength, or size. When in all actuality, it's much more. Society puts on a scientific age limit for becoming a man. They claim that just because it's your 18th birthday and you're legal, you have the ability to call yourself a man. We all have different abilities, thought processes, experiences, and genes. So how can we all become a man at 18? You're not a man because how strong you are. You're not a man because you're the best athlete in your school or have the flashiest clothes. Being a man in the 21st century is about the character of your heart. Being a man is so much more emotional than it is physical. To be a man, you have to stand up for what you believe in. You have to show love and compassion for others. It's a man who is honest and dependable. It's a man who has a man of his word. It's a man who takes care of the people around him and not just himself. To be a man is to be responsible. It is to feel shame at the sight of what seems to be unmerited misery. It is to take pride in victories of one comrade. It is to feel when setting one stone that one is contributing to the building of the world. Being a man of the 21st century isn't about the quantity of one's life, but the quality of how you treat others in your life. Thank you.
Yeah.